Sox fans, welcome to Good Guys Talk Back, a local fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast, hosted by Nick Murawski and Pat Hester.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back. Hey, it's Murawski, and this is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast. We do it weekly, live at 9:15 on the Good Guys Talk Back YouTube channel. Jump in if you have the opportunity. Get in on the comments in the chat area. Would love to hear from you, Sox fans. But the audio available absolutely everywhere you find your podcast, and we do appreciate that very, very much. So much to get to about this Chicago White Sox team. Happy Memorial Day weekend and all that fun stuff. With me, as always, my best friend, diehard Sox fan, Pat Hester. Hello, sir.
Nick, happy Memorial Day weekend to you, sir, and everybody listening and watching right now. Great weekend to enjoy with friends and family and barbecues. One of the ways you kind of kick off summer. So, it is what it is with our White Sox right now, Nick. It's some confusing things happen this week as usual. And we continue. The beat goes on, and thank you very much for the Rockies. And that's all. That's what we have to be thankful for. We can erase last year thanks to the Rockies, almost.
Yeah, the Rockies are still the absolute worst. Pittsburgh and Baltimore have improved slightly. The Chicago White Sox are still the second worst team in all of baseball at 17-36, a minus 50 run diff. But you know what? If they would have held on to this lead late in the game, really shot themselves in the foot. A guy that I wanted to talk about in a real positive way, a guy that you were all kinds of excited about heading into the season, Lenyn Sosa. Well, maybe we'll talk him in just a little bit. He is he can't figure it out defensively, which has always been kind of a problem as he's been wearing a White Sox uniform. But we'll get to him. But a pretty good weekend, I guess. 2 out of 3 from the Rangers. I was there this Sunday. It was indeed Charles Comiskey bobblehead day, and Sydney reminding us in the chat, by the way, welcome Steve and Scott and Sydney. Do appreciate it on a holiday weekend. Lovely Sunday, Pat. It warmed up. Great temperature. Family Sunday. Got there ahead of time to get the Charles Comiskey bobblehead. I got it right here next to me. A handsome fella. Here, the old Roman. And he is now immortalized in bobble form. And this is what they're doing here on Sundays in this year 125. A lot of Sunday afternoon bobbleheads from characters all over, the history of this franchise. And I think it's a really cool concept. Normally their big bobbleheads were always Saturday night. And you got this opportunity to, bring, some kids to the game. Hopefully it's your own kids. No judgment. I don't know what is going on in your life, but you bring your kids, family members, whatever, and you get to maybe talk to them a little bit about the history of this organization.
Oh, was Vinny, your 3-year-old, really enthralled with the history of Charles Comiskey today? Yes, you sat him down on your knee and you said, "Son, let me tell you about Charles Comiskey. See this bobblehead right here?"
As we were driving on the Stevenson, making our way to Sox Park, I was trying to explain to Vince the meaning of today. He knew that it was a bobblehead day, and explaining the power of Charles Comiskey, why this is meaningful, why they commemorate Charles Comiskey, what the ballpark used to be called. And I don't know how much of he got of that. Probably not much, but I tried, Pat. I really tried.
You know what was going on in his head? Just do 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 do. And that's he's first of all, he's a boy, So he's
Yeah.
not listening to anything you're saying at all.
Right.
And he's young. So good for you for trying. A for effort for you,
Yep.
Nick. That's fantastic. My
Yep.
question is,
Mhm.
is there anything you have to drill into this bobblehead? Is there an
No
apparatus of some
accessories.
sort that needs to be attached that they sold separately at a different spot in the ballpark?
No accessories. So this one
No
is just
cigars, or I'm sure.
no.
I would imagine Charlie Comiskey was a cigar smoker. Just look
Oh,
at
I'm sure they
just look
all
at the way he's
were. Yeah.
dressed. I mean, it looks like
Yeah.
he should be
Yeah.
has a big cigar, lighting it
Yeah.
with dollar bills.
Yeah. This is it's a handsome design. Yeah, but I could see that. I'm sure that was always a big deal. I mean, just we talked about it last episode towards the end, and the book that I thought does a phenomenal job on the history and in his beginnings. A native Chicagoan, a guy that was a player, came back, brought a team back to the South Side, and all the investments that he made and the many generations. They had the history kind of on one of not the jumbotron, but one of the big scoreboards. A bunch of facts about Charles Comiskey, his family, the people that took over for decades and decades and decades. The White Sox had that bloodline, just like the Bears have the Hallis bloodline. The Sox had the Comiskey bloodline for a long period of time. I don't know exactly when that streak ended. Early 60s, maybe.
Okay.
But that, it was a wonderful day, Pat. Just, you got to get out to these Sunday day games this year. And guess who's on the organ, of course.
Oh, well, our friend Nancy, did you stop by?
I stopped by before we left. I brought Vince and Adrian. We walked over, and she had a nice, collection of people, obviously, that were coming by and trying to just get a photo of her or get a photo in front of her booth, just having her in the background. She was busy at work, man, and she looked like she was just so happy.
Yeah.
And it was awesome hearing the organ and how her wit, her quick wit.
Oh, yeah.
And putting in different songs at different times. Like, she didn't miss a beat.
Yeah.
And so I tried to, I wanted to kind of say hello. Hopefully she remembered, but I didn't want to take her off her game because she was really in it. And her wonderful husband, Joe, was right there in the booth as kind of her roadie in a way. But what was really fascinating about
roadie. Faust. You're saying that Nancy Faust has a roadie?
Yeah. It was he's all over that. He's helping her out and setting everything up. And she had, it looked like file folders, all handwritten notes, Pat, next to her that Joe was kind of handing and helping her organize of her next songs per inning and different transition things. All of it was just handwritten.
Yeah.
It was really cool, like, just to see her work in that process, and big grin on her face, gorgeous Sunday. And it just felt different. It felt different having her playing, walking around. It took me way back, and it had the game, the experience had a different feel to it, which I liked. I liked that.
Well, I need to get myself out to the ballpark on a Sunday because that's everything that you romanticize about this game.
Yeah.
Not just baseball, but being a White Sox fan in general. So I look forward to having a weekend where I'm not at a tournament of some sort and have the ability to do that, because I'd love to. And you're right. It has that different feeling about it that it can help you remove yourself from being the second worst team in baseball and the worst team of all time last year and go, this is why I love it. This is why we can't wait for baseball to start again after a long winter off. And it'd be nice for the winning to accompany it again sooner rather than later. But for now, this is nice for us. it's nice. It's a nice thing. We don't get nice things. This is nice for us.
Yeah, I think if you can compartmentalize and remove the anger, which I still harvest, but I don't want it to dominate me and be the narrative of how I experience this season. But if you can remove that bitter, that anger of how I really felt after that Cubs series, if I could remove that and then replace it with just the joy of baseball, the joy of just being back at a ballpark, and just it's a beautiful Sunday in the city of Chicago, and just being thankful, that I at least get to have this and experience it with my family, and have those memories of Nancy Faust playing when I was a kid, going to the ballpark, and now Vince gets to hear it. How cool is that?
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, that's something that you would enjoy passing down and talking about when he's older. And listen, this is unique, and here's why it's unique. And this wasn't being done. There's certain things about being a fan of this team, and I'm sure most fans of most teams can find these individual experiences well, but there's just a lot of uniqueness with this team and its history. And that's why we're celebrating 125 years and looking at those pieces minus, again, the winning, which has been ripped away from us too many times. So being able to pass along this stuff to your kids at our age now is really a fun and cool thing.
Yeah, I think it's building that that generational fandom. It's really, you kind of have to work at it. The games are difficult to find on the television. The team is not good at all, pretty much irrelevant. So you have to do a lot of self-manufacturing. You've got to be the steward if you're going to pass this game along to a loved one or a friend or somebody in your life that you want this to continue. It's not going to happen organically, or because right now, who knows what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years, but right now you really have to work at it. It has to be purposeful, I think, if I want my son or to have that feeling, the feelings that I had as a kid that were passed down to my parents, and so going to the games, carving time out for that, talking about them, my son was really enamored with the "Let's Go White Sox" chant. And when we went a couple weeks ago for the Dick Allen bobblehead, and he heard these kids in our section that were starting this, "Let's Go White Sox," and then you'd be following it up with a clap, and then it started to build. And he was like, I could see the wheels turning in his head, like, wait a second, someone could just create that? Like, I don't have to wait. And so he started doing it. And then around the house, leading up to this game we attended on Sunday, he would just randomly, for no reason whatsoever, the game wasn't even on, just "Let's Go White Sox." He would just start chanting. And I couldn't help but just sit there and just smile, grin ear to ear. He might not necessarily know what he's doing, but that's how it starts, right?
Yeah.
It was just
awesome. Let's be honest, Nick. You and I don't really know what we're doing either. So
that is true. That is very true. And I realize that every single day of, wow.
Yeah. I mean,
I made it there somehow.
Yeah. My son, my 5-year-old went and spent the day at the ballpark with
that's right.
my mom and dad.
Yeah.
With my mom and dad on Saturday. I got him a couple tickets, and they took Luke, and he just had a ball. And I was kind of, I hadn't taken him since he was probably, I don't know, 2. He was young, right? And when they're that young, as it's difficult. You're not staying very long probably, and it's going to be a lot of up and down and catering to whatever. But he seemed like he had a blast. He enjoyed being up in the fan zone. He was mad that he didn't get any hits in the batting cage because he's obsessed with baseball at the moment. and he just loves the game. And he did the run. I think it's Lou Bob who you're running against up there in the kids zone up there. Yeah. He had a blast doing that. Got spoiled rotten with a hot dog, a piece of pizza, and a helmet sundae. I mean,
oh boy,
can you go wrong? I mean,
no, that's a perfect Saturday. Yeah.
I'm just hoping that there's still inheritance money for me after yesterday, but that's neither here nor there.
I try to get a hat out of your parents if they're really just throwing the monies around.
Talk to Dick Hester about that. You have his personal number.
I will
communicate with him more than I do, I'm sure. But he stayed the whole game. He just he ate it up with a spoon. He was, he was into it. And he got home. He goes, Dad, they won 10-5. It was this, it was that. They saw fireworks. There were some home runs. So it's
beautiful.
That's what it's all about right there. And I had stopped by in between tournament games. I had stopped by a couple of the coaches that I coach with. We're having a get together, so I popped over for a cold one. And this guy's got a great garage setup, Mr. Jason Linko. Shout out to Coach Linko. And he's got the Cubs game on one of the TVs in the garage and the Sox game on the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just enjoying sitting there watching the game. I'm seeing them come back and score a lot of runs.
This is a new thing for you.
It was, and I'm finding myself, and I'm yelling stretch to the ball that are getting to the warning track, and people are looking at me like I'm goofy. But I'm like, I don't get to watch a lot of White Sox baseball, and it's fun when they're playing.
That was a good one. That was a good one to watch on Saturday. Yeah.
So anyway,
well, good. Yeah, they took advantage of some mistakes, and I thought they were going to hold on. That has been an issue for sure. They haven't been able to score a lot of runs, and they haven't been blown out a lot. The run diff, minus 50. It just doesn't feel like there's been lopsided losses.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a bunch of games that could have gone either way. And unfortunately, this Sunday was one of those where the Sox had miscues and the Rangers took advantage of it. Rangers are, they're 2 games under 500, but they've got some pitching, man. The Rangers absolutely have some pitching. And the Sox, held their own. Without a couple guys that we'll get to in a moment. But I want to talk about return of Jake Burger. He was back on the south side, and he hit a home run on Sunday that was that really was holding up for a while. Sox had to come back from behind from that home run, and he didn't do too much in the series. But is he a guy that, as we're looking at the way this team is going, I feel like he was such a fan favorite. I don't know if we would have seen, things go any different wins-loss wise if he was still around. But would you like to see that, knowing that we got absolutely nothing really in return for Jake Burger? None of what we got back is going to do anything for us. I think I kind of want to just kept Jake Burger around, for some of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's room on a ball club for a guy like a Jake Burger, but he's not going to be someone that's going to be a cornerstone for your organization. He can be a piece. And I was okay with the fact that they traded him. It was, as you mentioned, the fact that there was zero that you got back.
Yeah.
So if you're going to get absolutely nothing in terms of value, why are you letting guys like that go? Like good clubhouse, seemingly good. I don't know. I'm not in the clubhouse, but it just, on the surface, seemingly like a good dude, like a dude that you want in the locker room, a dude that you want young players to be around. Like
easy to root for.
Here's a guy that had a lot of adversity, in his career coming up and kept battling. Like that's a guy that you want to mentor, people coming up in your organization as you're growing this thing, from the ground up. So yeah, and that whole situation, the whole story about that trade and how it went down, and the Rick and Kenny, not on the same page, obviously, and making that deal. So the whole thing is icky and yucky, and you would just hope that kind of stuff wouldn't happen going forward. But who's to say what what direction this organization is going to have going forward. But
Yeah.
Again, long story short, Nick, is I would like to have a Jake Berger purely on the fact that you didn't get anything for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and then there's some scrappy guys on this ball club right now, guys that I have liked rooting for. I wanted to keep rooting for Tim Elko. I wasn't
Like, yes, you can't do that.
Couldn't do that. I'm not shocked that he went down to Charlotte. I thought it was sooner than anticipated. I really wanted to see more of Tim Elko in a season like this.
Mm-hmm.
What was really shocking, it was absolutely due. I didn't think they were ever going to do it, was Andrew Vaughn being sent to Charlotte. Vaughn, third pick in the 2019 draft, who has been in the big leagues since 2021, sent to AAA Charlotte. He was batting 189 with 8 doubles, 5 home runs, and 19 RBIs in 48 games. We've talked about it quite a bit. Everybody that has been watching, paying attention, feel like for a while now on Andrew Vaughn, kind of done with the Andrew Vaughn experience. If you want to cut bait on guys from the old regime, the Hahn, Williams, Grifol, however you want to look at that, and Venable starts clean with guys and we just move forward, like all of that failed. I mean, Vaughn falls in that category. I think we wanted it to work out. Somebody, please, a first-round pick, somebody work out for us. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. I mean, he's going down to try to get himself right, but that was shocking to me. It was due, but more of the breath of like another failed first-round pick, I think.
Yeah, it's a little bit, for the expectations that we all had and what we were hoping for him. And, a lot of us, I think you included, were thinking the next Paul Konerko and Staple. Yeah. And really in the long line of first baseman that we've had in terms of we understand what a first baseman is. We can bring that guy along and develop them, and we can recognize that talent. We were really hoping that this was the next, runner in the marathon getting the baton, but it wasn't meant to be. Whether it was, I mean, he really was just given the, like the magic carpet ride, like right up to the major leagues. Like he didn't get a lot of seasoning.
COVID really, yeah, I think COVID had a lot to do with that. Yeah.
So I'm not using that as an excuse, but it was almost like the organization had kind of just deemed this guy, he's ready. He's a finished product. We're bringing him up, and to hell with anybody that thinks he's going to fail, because he won't. I mean, they had such conviction on him. They were, to use a Rick Hahn, very bullish on Andrew Vaughn. Yeah. So that's one thing. Two, depending on what kind of, mental fortitude he has, over the past several years, as well documented, it's been a fractured clubhouse and a lot of cancerous personalities over time in there. Maybe that just didn't do him any service. Maybe he needs a fresh start somewhere else. And I'm not saying he's going to be the player that we all expect, but maybe he can salvage his career, because he does. There's no doubt that there's talent there. There's stuff there. He's just not going to get, extracted out of him here.
Yeah. Our quote of the week features some Andrew Vaughn language from Chris Getz, which was, kind of interesting. Chris Getz obviously talking at the beginning of the homestand, and some of the things that he hinted at of what they were hoping for and what maybe could happen in Charlotte for Andrew Vaughn. But it's just overall really disappointing. And here are your first round picks. I took a little dive on this, and you got to have a strong stomach for this. But these are your first round draft picks from the Chicago White Sox since 2013. Tim Anderson, Carlos Rodon, Carson Fulmer, Zach Collins, Zach Birdie, Jake Berger, Nick Madrigal, Andrew Vaughn, Garrett Crochet. I'm going to stop there because they're all gone. Okay, we're getting nothing from our first round draft picks. Okay, all of that. Let's tank. Let's get those picks. Obviously, they never had the 1 or 2 pick, but they had some high picks. Nothing from their first round picks. So Montgomery, Schultz, Gonzalez, and Smith are the last 4. I mean, the clock is on. I mean, they're on for these guys. Now, Montgomery went down to Arizona, has popped back up to Charlotte, and has been just crushing the ball as of late. Schultz is throwing well. So these guys, much like was happening with some of those from the list that I mentioned, they were at one point just on fire at whatever stage they were in the minors. They were coveted prospect. We're going to talk about another one in a little bit that the Sox have completely cut bait on, that Rick Hahn was bullish on and forced down our throats as a fandom. But when I read that list, Pat, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's what's done is done. We can cry over it, vent over it. I mean, but it's just to put that out there and examine it. Like, wow. When you put it in perspective, that's a hell of a list to not be getting anything from those guys right now.
Yeah. Well, TA was, it's I think that just the downward spiral towards the end of his Sox time it's a really sad story. And because the talent was there. I mean, we saw it. I mean, we witnessed the best of what he'll ever be. And unfortunately, I just think that he was his own worst enemy in a lot of ways, in terms of whatever was going on in his personal life. Just never seemed to be able to get his personal affairs, and whatever they were, under control, to allow him to continue to be the all-star level, superstar almost level player that we were kind of really jazzed up about. We sat here many times talking about the straw that stirs the drink in Tim Anderson. So that's an unfortunate one. That's a player that we saw a rise and fall so quickly, but I don't think it had anything to do with developing him as a player. I think it was just self-inflicted wounds, unfortunately for him. Carlos Rodon, we're not going to pay you. We're not going to pay pitchers, right? And probably got scared off because of the injury history. And I can't 100% fault the organization for. You got burned by the John Dake steal many years ago, and that still leaves a scar apparently. And it's just, we're not going to pay this guy. But again, another guy that, boy, we started to enjoy the best of what that guy was. So I think those first 2 guys on the list, there was stuff there to like get excited about. And maybe if things go a little bit different, the ball bounces a different way for both of those guys in their lives, whether it's injury history or, personal issues. Maybe we're still talking about them being on this team and helping us, challenge for divisions year in and year out, because that's at one point, Nick, those 2 guys were pretty potent in terms of their abilities. And maybe it was just for a flash in the pan, brief moment type of thing. I think Tim Anderson was a little bit longer than a flash in the pan, but it is what it is. I mean, the Collins, I mean, the guys that you named after that, are like
these
my
guys,
shoulders, I guess, a little bit at. But
yeah, Collins, Birdie. I mean, Birdie had a bunch of injury issues. Madrigal, obviously, we know what happened there. They really went all in, gave up on Madrigal for. Oh my goodness, I can't. I've lost the guy's name. The closer that couldn't really be the setup guy.
Yeah. I
man,
can't
it's
remember.
amazing how names could just escape your brain when
Yeah.
you're like, you have no use for me, and I for you, and so you're out.
When we thought
Crochet's the one that,
when we had two dominant closers
yeah,
and only one inning to close.
Kimbrel, thank you, Howard.
Yeah.
Kimbrel, and when you have two closers, you have zero closers,
Mhm.
and that was the problem with that. Crochet's the one that I think is going to win a Cy Young, and he's going to have a really nice career. I really do believe that. So I don't know, just revisiting that list after and who knows, Andrew Vaughn might go down to Charlotte, and I don't know what's going to happen. He might have a handful of hits in a short amount of time, then come back up to Chicago and just kind of tread water for a little bit longer, bought himself maybe a few more months. I don't know. I don't see that. I don't see a trip to Charlotte like rejuvenating him, and he's going to come
got
back.
good barbecue in Charlotte, though. Maybe like a little barbecue.
He maybe sets up his own little barbecue joint. He just stays there.
Good luck.
Yeah, could be something for him in his future. But here's crossing your fingers for Montgomery, Schultz, Gonzalez, and Smith. Hope to see them when the time is ready. Hope that they can produce for this team and help us get back into relevancy. A guy that was number two White Sox prospect. Okay, this guy was signed with international money, I believe, and he was supposed to be this next great thing. He can hit, he could do everything, right? And I'm speaking of Oscar Colas, and we got that really pushed down our throats. They never went after outfield help. It was like Sheets. We're going to turn Sheets into an outfielder. He's been working hard with Daryl Boston, and I think they figured out a bunch of things. So we're thinking Sheets is, don't sleep on Gavin Sheets in the outfield. And then it was Oscar Colas. Like, don't overlook Oscar Colas. I think this is going to be your guy. And he had a heck of a spring training in 2023. He opened up with the ball club. He had some issues with Pedro Grifol. Do you remember when Grifol wanted him to kind of turn the volume down? Like he was playing too fast or too loud or too aggressive or something. And Pedro hated young guys, that he was going to put everybody in their place, and just that never worked out. He was up and down. I think they tried him at first base for a period of time, just never looked comfortable, couldn't hit something off speed, couldn't hit a cutoff guy to save his life. It really unfortunate. Well, the Sox just completely have cut bait with him, and he's signed a minor league deal with the Los Angeles Angels. So he is long gone. Do you have any favorite or any moment at all from the Oscar Colas period that you wanted to reflect on during this most cherished time?
When they were putting the banners up on the streets before opening day and on the light poles, when I think who was it Pedro? And he's like, well, we don't know what we're doing yet with right field, or we don't know if he's going to make the big league club. Well, we got the banners out in front of the ballpark.
They put those out. And we were all, I mean, they're not putting banners out for guys that are going to get sent down to Charlotte to open up the season. So
that's my memory on an Oscar Colas. But it's interesting that the Angels keep picking up. Like they're like the trash man. They're coming around on Wednesdays. Make sure it's out before 7 a.m.
Reclamation projects. Yeah.
What other guys can we put out for the Angels?
Well, someone that is maybe looking to still play baseball, maybe Jose Abreu looks at what's going on in LA and says, hey, can I have an open tryout? I could still do some things. You got Moncada there, Timmy Baseball Anderson, and now, as Howard pointed out, the Cuban Otani, Oscar Colas. So maybe Abreu wants to play a little bit more baseball.
I don't know. I think Jose is. He's been. Yeah, I think he's done. I don't think so. Yeah, I think so.
Next time you see him, he very well could have his jersey retired by the White Sox. I'm
You
still
think
thinking that
so?
could happen. I still think that could happen. There
Yeah.
needs to be some mending and some maybe some TLC on both sides, but he meant a lot to the White Sox organization for a good portion of the time. I mean, in the mid to the 2000 teens to the early 2020s, he was the face of the franchise.
Oh, 100%. And again, I don't want to ever disparage Jose Abreu, but I mean, I don't know if there's some fences I think that it seemingly seemed to be mended between him and Jerry. There was a point where it was, I'll sign whatever contract or whatever you put in front of me. I just want to be a White Sox. To he didn't have any interest, I don't think, in sticking around. So something happened there, and I don't know what it was, but there was a little bit of love lost.
Yeah, I think he thought maybe you were going to treat me a little bit differently after everything I did and stuck around and business was business. And he thought he was going to get coddled a little bit maybe with a better deal, like he was going to benefit. And Jerry that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And he, I think, had to learn the hard way and thought he absolutely still had a lot of baseball in him. And he did for like one postseason with the Astros, I think.
Yeah.
But other than that, absolutely not. And they cut him with a ton of money still on the table.
Yeah.
That was a bold move by the Astros. So right now, the Chicago White Sox number 2 prospect in their system is Kyle Teel, who we got back from that Crochet deal. So, and Kyle Teel, he's been hitting the ball. He might be up with the Sox. They might carry 3 catchers, in the near future. It's possible. So keep your eyes on Kyle Teel. How does his future look compared to what happened with Colas? I'm hoping Teel has a better career in a White Sox uniform. Let's say that.
That's a very low bar, Nick.
That's like you make a whole season without being jacked around with, and it's like, hey, I've already passed Oscar Colas's time in a White Sox uniform.
Yeah.
Nothing to really celebrate. That's more just to kind of eternalize and just say, okay, I got past that.
Just get perfect attendance. Like that can be something you can do.
Yeah.
That's nothing to sneeze at now. That perfect attendance in school is hard. Which I
would
say,
I would say 8th grade graduation. Not to demean 8th grade graduation. That's wonderful. You made it out of 8th grade, but you've got like a lot more schooling left. And what I mean, like it's a big deal. That's wonderful. It's exciting. You're out of middle school, but it's 8th grade graduation, so.
You know what? That's funny. My daughter graduated from 8th grade this past week, which makes me feel old, by the way. She'll be a high schooler. And I was very proud of her, but it's like a lot of people graduate 8th grade. It'll be fine. You're good for you. You've made it to the next grade. I was happy for her. But it was interesting listening to the valedictorian and the subtator, whatever the next one down. If you're not the valedictorian, whatever the one below that is,
salutatorian.
Yeah, that's why you're smart and well read. And the speeches,
I'm well read on 8th grade awards. Yes,
the next chapter in our lives, and the world is our oyster, and everything. Yeah. Homework was hard, but we're going to be great. It did make me chuckle a little bit because
you have to laugh at stuff like that, and it's like, come on,
kid, you got no clue. Life is gonna it'd be like a brick in the face soon, and the joy will be sucked out of you faster than
you're going to be released and signing a minor league deal with the Angels.
Before you know it, you'll have Pedro Grafal as your boss.
That's how you know things went really, really bad. Really, really bad. Speaking of that, now Luis Robert Jr. had an okay series against the Texas Rangers, 4 for 11 with 3 RBIs.
Mhm.
But up into that Texas series, man, he has been nothing what we hoped for, and I think he's getting it. If he didn't before, maybe he did, but now he's actually like articulating it. So this is some quotes from Luis Robert Jr. and just a little bit of perspective on what's been happening here. Right now, as my season is going, I don't think anybody is going to take a chance on me, Robert said through interpreter. I just focus on trying to get better. I can't think of anything else. His $15 million salary in 2025 represents the final in this 6-year, $50 million dollar deal with 20 million team options for each 2026 and 27 and a $2 million buyout. I try to be that player every day. I prepare myself the best way I can to be that player. If at the end of the day the results aren't there, that is something I can't control, said Robert. Everybody here works hard to get the results every day. When you are working harder and the results aren't there, you feel a little sad for sure. When you are struggling, you think about everything. You overthink stuff. And when you are good, you go to the plate and you don't think about anything. You just go up there and you do what you're supposed to do. Now, I really focused in on that terminology of being good. And I had to take a step back and I had to say to myself, no disrespect to Luis Robert Jr. and what he could be or what he was supposed to be, but has he ever really been good? How often has he really been good? Has he been in the MVP competitions? I know he won a Gold Glove and he was an all-star selection, but like I'm even looking at like Player of the Week. Like Miguel Vargas recently, had the AL Player of the Week award. I mean, Luis Robert Jr., I'm sure, has won the AL Player of the Week award multiple times, wouldn't you think? I mean, take a guess, Pat. How many times do you think that he is named Player of the Week?
Twice?
Once.
Hmm.
He's earned the honor once, the week of June 19th through the 25th in 2023, after hitting 444 with 4 home runs, 5 RBIs, and over 1,000 slugging percentage over 6 games. So I say to you, and good is such a bizarre, abstract term, but how often can we really say, oh yeah, like Luis Robert Jr., he's been on one. He was always in these like, these dominant stretches and just a dangerous player. And if we could just get back to it, has he ever really been there for a sustainable period of time?
The only time I would say, Nick, that I would say, boy, just he's dangerous at the plate, seemingly, was in 2021 or 2020, the COVID year, the shortened season.
Yeah.
And I can't sit here and say because he did this, this, and this, and I'll rattle off a bunch of stats. I don't, my brain can't go that far back. But it just seems like that was the last time. And maybe it was just because the excitement of the guy that's finally here that we've been watching YouTube videos of and just demolish every level of minor league baseball. And maybe just whatever he did was just we're lapping it up with a spoon at that time. And the fact that we were just excited to have live sports again back in our lives. And just, maybe there was some things that altered what reality was. But that's to me the only time you go, wow, because every year after it's like, okay, I feel like he's got this going now, he's got that going, he's going to build on this, and then you have these lulls. Once he gets that hole in his swing figured out, where he's swinging at everything low and away, or breaking balls or off speed stuff that he can't figure out at this level. I don't know. I can't really sit here and say he's been quote unquote good at any point.
The lack of consistency is what really, really troubles me. And of course, there's been, so many injuries. You feel like he's getting we want him to get the at-bats. We want him to get into a rhythm. Beginning of the season is traditionally a slow slog for him, and he gets hurt, and now he's got the speed thing. Boy, is he can be a threat on the base paths.
Oh, yeah.
That has been nice to see. But, nothing offensively, that you really want to say, wow, that's a guy that I'm willing to give up most of my farm system for. That's a guy that I got to have. I absolutely have to have. And here are my top prospects, White Sox. Take them. You're willing to offload Luis Robert Jr.? Are you crazy? Wow. Okay. Before you think a second time, here are my best players that I have in my system. There's no way the Sox are getting anything close to what they thought they were going to get. And he's right. Luis Robert Jr. is finally right. He's finally saying it. I'm not there. They're not getting anything for me. I'm not putting up those numbers. And it's like he's talking out like a therapeutic session in that quote. And
how do you think Chris Getz feels about that? Do you think he calls down and goes, hey guy, why don't you stop talking for a while, champ?
Yeah. We're going to send you down to Charlotte just to get that head right. Everybody's doing it. It's the new thing. We'll get you down there.
To Charlotte. It's the place to be.
It's great barbecue. Vaughn's going to set up his own shack later this summer. It's a nice food truck he bought, and he's going to refab. Yeah, I don't know. It's disappointing because he's healthy.
Yeah,
we get to see him consistently, but I'm more excited about seeing Miguel Vargas play more and Caro and Maydroth. I was more disappointed about Elko being sent down. I wanted to see him again in person, so goofy, just really goofy where your interests are in 2025 here.
Yeah. And, I think maybe the reason why he was so honest, maybe he's kind of fed up with himself too. He's trying to play himself out of here.
Possibly,
and it's like, man, I have got to get this figured out. And he's probably pressing a lot because the only way I'm getting out of here is if I perform and somebody wants to take a flyer, because if I'm the White Sox, I'm not just offloading him for nothing. We've done that too often.
Yeah.
I don't know what the benefit, I guess, is to keeping him, but I can't just keep giving away guys and not getting anything for them anymore. I'm not in that business anymore.
Yeah, I think it's just that the knowing of when to sell, the knowing of when to realize, I got to rip the Band-Aid off. It might not get any better than this. And you hope that you could squeeze a little bit more out before the trade deadline. Can he show off all of his tools, play consistently, and we could get that extra guy or that guy we really covet in someone else's system that we need. That's kind of where they were, I think, with the Cease deal.
Yeah.
That one, oh, gosh, that one was something else. So, in a little bit here, we are going to talk about Mount Rushmore of Sox players. So if you're with us live right now on the program, or even if you're listening audio, before we get to this next segment, think about who you would have on your Mount Rushmore, your 4 players, your White Sox 4 players, as we talk about and celebrate 125 years as a franchise. And then throw in a couple alternates too, but we're going to talk about that in a moment. So Sox are 16 and a half back in the ever-forgiving AL Central, as we mentioned, second worst record of all in baseball. But a guy that is, been, I think, a bit of a pleasant surprise offensively, a guy that you really were hoping to see something out of, Pat, as we started this year, has been Lenyn Sosa. Now, I was ready to give this guy a ton of credit on the show, but he has had some major defensive issues. I mean, he's playing first base today's game. Couldn't find the bag, was nowhere near the bag.
Problem.
It's a bit of a problem. Same thing at second base recently. Didn't tag the bag. And this is a guy that got hit in the face with a throwdown from the catcher, last year, I think.
I think it was last year.
Seems a bit out of place at times, kind of aloof, maybe caught up. But the offense, man, he's hitting the ball in the screws lately. Last 7 games, slashing 391, 417, 609, 9 for 23, a home run, 5 RBIs, 6 strikeouts. Now only 1 walk. That's always going to be a bugaboo with Lenyn Sosa. He doesn't see pitches and he doesn't walk. The defense is really maddening. But, do you forgive that just so you can have some of that offense? And hope that it's just maybe the beginning of something.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're a little bit more excited about Lenyn Sosa than I was. I'm kind of lukewarm on him. He seems like a guy, but you kind of need guys that can produce like that and just be. I think he's a solid player, right? But almost a man without a home. Right. That we've talked about these guys before. Like, why can't we have guys that just have positions? It's like you want him to win, not win because we're already in the season, but you want him to take hold of second base and become that.
Yes. Yeah.
A guy. So
that's what you were talking about, Pat.
Yeah.
You were talking about somebody just owning and taking second base. Not that it was given, but you absolutely took it. You owned it.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping for, and to see him moving around and playing other positions and not playing them very well, is a little bit frightening, I guess, right? Because do we not know enough about him to know where he plays his best at this point?
Yeah.
We shouldn't we? He's had enough minor league experience. He's been up in the majors. I mean, why can't we have him solidified to that spot for the majority of the time? So I don't know. It's maddening to me that you can get to this level of baseball and be like, well, he does this okay and he does that okay, and he could probably slide over and do this if we really needed him. Man alive, I can't. I just that just seems odd. I mean, listen, I help out and coach my son's team. And we're moving kids around. They're 9 years old, right? We kind of know where these kids are best at, but we're giving kids shots at places to help them grow and develop and try and do things with them and build confidence and give kids rest and sit kids and make sure everybody has an opportunity to play and all that kind of stuff. But my goodness, these are grown men. Like you're telling me you can't figure out a position and play it at this level. And I don't know. Maybe I always wrongly, give second base not the due it deserves. But second base to me doesn't seem like the toughest position to play. And maybe again, this is coming from a guy that's never played an inning ever, right? But it seems it's the shortest throw. You're not getting many ground balls a second anyway. You've got to be there for the double play. You've got to back up on a steal. I get all that stuff, but it's not shortstop. It's not catcher. It's second base. Come on.
A grossly underrated White Sox second baseman is up next on the Sunday bobblehead giveaways, June 8th. Ray Durham will be getting his bobblehead, and that's when you have Ray Durham that was just in the lineup for so many years, and I feel like we're still trying to figure out second base so many years after. I like some of the offense I've seen, but the position stuff, the bouncing around, that needs to stop eventually here. I am tired of that with you. Lenyn Sosa won't be on anybody's Mount Rushmore ever. I can probably confidently say that. But every now and then on this podcast, Pat, we revisit this idea of if you had to carve out a Mount Rushmore of White Sox players, 4 players, and we'll even go with a couple alternates because you're trying to cover 125 years. And I thought it would be a nice time to revisit this in this 125 season. And I happened to be a guest on a podcast this past week, a wonderful podcast. It's called Pod of Fame, and it's run by Jim Mylock, local guy. And he's a Cubs fan. He's up on the north side, but he does a wonderful job with this podcast. He covers all sports, and he makes arguments for players that are kind of borderline in their respective sports of entering their respective Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had me on a couple times to talk Dick Allen and Robin Ventura. And he is a wonderful host, very detailed, does his research. And he asked me to come on to talk Paul Konerko. And I really, you know me, my feelings towards Paul Konerko. He is my favorite White Sox player. So I had a very biased but when this drops in a couple weeks, even if you're really knowledgeable about Paul Konerko and you formed opinions already, there's some great stuff that come out of this podcast that makes you think a little bit more on Konerko and what his future decades down the line might hold. But Jim in the podcast asked me if Paul Konerko would be on my Mount Rushmore of Sox players. And I said he would. And Jim was really surprised by that. And he was like, interesting. I didn't see Paul Konerko out of all the players, all the legends that the White Sox have had. I didn't see Paul Konerko and I said, for a lot of different reasons, not only how long he played in a White Sox, the way he played the game and really defined that like South Side edge, that lunch pail, hard hat, but his moments, and they were big moments. And if you bring a World Series to the South Side, a city that hadn't had it in a very, very, very long time, 88 years, and you have that moment he had in Game 2 that's immortalized, and your number is quickly retired, and there's a statue after you leave the game, and everything you meant to the franchise, I have him as one of my guys. So that brought up this whole conversation, and there's been some great lists coming in here in the chat right now. Before I get to you, Pat, I want to hear your list, and then I'll kind of give you my other three. Howard says Thomas, Appling, Baines, Minoso. Jerry has Thomas, Guillen, Konerko, Burley, JT with Fisk, Baines, Thomas, Guillen, Sidney, Thomas, Guillen, Baines, Burley, with Ordonez is an honorable mention, Pat. Some love for Fox. I mean, there's so many guys that you can think of. I threw this out to you in text earlier today, and it's a tough assignment, but I know there's a layup, but I don't know who you would have for your other three. So if you wanted to, I'd love to hear your list.
Well, I currently have 7 people written down.
It is. We've extended the mountain. The memorial is.
Well, it's about. I mean, you can put. There's things that we've done. I mean, we're living in an age of technology.
Someone knows how to do that.
Someone can add more heads. I'll just rattle these. These are in no particular order whatsoever. But I'll put Frank Thomas on, obviously, in this Mount Rushmore. Mark Burley, Paul Konerko, Jack McDowell, Robin Ventura, Fisk, and Ozzie would be the 7. And then I'd have to whittle it down from there, which is very difficult. So I guess if I was to whittle it down, I guess Blackjack would be gone. And probably, boy, Carlton Fisk. He was probably my second favorite player of all time.
Yeah.
I love Carlton Fisk. Whew. I guess Robin's got to go. And then it would come down between Fisk and Ozzie as my next two. But the non-negotiables are Frank Thomas, Mark Burley, and Paul Konerko.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's a great list. I mean, lists really, I think, they mirror the era you were a fan, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the guys that were really great during your beginnings of a fan, perhaps, or maybe your formative years. I don't know. I think if you're a real history buff, and it's tough for me to truly know how amazing some of these players were. Like Howard, I think, said Appling, and Appling played 20 years all with the White Sox. He's a Hall of Famer. I mean, an absolute legend. His number is retired. I don't, you know, you got to read it. Well, I have Minnie Minoso.
Okay.
Because of what he meant to the organization for so many years. And I don't know, he just is synonymous to me with the White Sox, Mr. White Sox.
Yeah. How about,
so
did you have Oscar Colas on your list?
He's on the backside of the mountain. JT had a great list: Bo Jackson, Manny Ramirez, Ken Griffey Jr., and Jose Canseco.
Wow, that is a Hall of Fame list right there.
Yeah. So I had Minoso. You know about Paul Konerko. So I had Minnie Minoso and Paul Konerko. Frank Thomas, you have to have. Okay. And you know, Jim on in this podcast, this Pod of Fame, we were trying to talk about, you know, did Paul Konerko jump the awesomeness of Frank Thomas? And Frank Thomas was in a league of his own. He was just one of one for a stretch. He was so dominant. His numbers are so gaudy. Konerko was never just scaring a league for multiple years the way Frank Thomas did, you know. So you can't do that. But what Konerko did was the way he went about his business for the length that he played. Now, he was on playoff teams 2000, 2005, 2008, 6 all-star selections.
Mm-hmm.
And then the big moments, the ALCS MVP, the World Series. I mean, the dude was hit in the face with a fastball.
Yeah.
And then stayed in the game. And then the next pitch he saw for the next at bat hit a home run. I mean, that's just, you have instantly got your fandom to fall in love with you for stuff like that, you know? And so, okay, I've got Minoso, Thomas, Konerko, and I had Shoeless Joe. I did have Appling and Fox, Aparicio, which he's got a bobblehead coming up. Dick Allen, short period of time, but you could argue that he saved the White Sox from going to Seattle and Milwaukee. Burley. I'm between Fisk and Guillen. And I have to put Guillen ahead of Fisk, even though, like you, when in 1990, 89, 90, when baseball was king, it was everything. Sports Center was everything. Baseball cards were everything. I was such a Fisk fan. You know, I was a catcher in Little League, and I just loved Carlton Fisk. But I also liked Ozzie Guillen as a player. He was so fun, and you know, he was around the team for seemingly forever, and then he left, and he came back as a manager, and he brought back a World Series. And I think that because that was like my World Series. You know, we're not talking 1906 or 1917. I have to put Guillen ahead of Fisk there.
I can't argue with your rationale there at all. And I haven't chosen between the two of them. I don't know if I don't know. Because I just love Fisk more as a player as a youth. I loved Ozzie, but it's tough. This is tough. I don't know why
you could make an argument for Charles Comiskey.
Oh, well, he does have a bobblehead right next to you.
He's meant.
He's not going to come to life and argue with you. You don't have to say glowing things about Charles Comiskey.
What he meant to, the franchise. Without Charles Comiskey, there's no Chicago. We're not sitting here talking about this.
You could put Hawk on there then.
And then, well, okay. Now this is an interesting conversation because you could have the players, and then you can have the personalities or the people that have shaped the White Sox. So you can have a second mountain, which I think is pretty easy. Hawk, Nancy, you
Gene
would
Honda,
put
and Roger Bossard.
Roger Bossard. So there you go.
Hawk
But
would
you
probably
could,
want his own by himself.
he's like, hey, I'm one of one. I'm on my own mountain. And well, then you'd have to put Bill Veeck. Bill Veeck would be a possibility.
That's true. Although Bill Veeck probably more like a tree, like a wooden leg type situation. He's like a big oak tree or something.
I thought it was just something fun to kind of kick around this holiday weekend. Try it out. Always good party entertainment. You're at a barbecue and you just need an icebreaker. And who would you
if you're at a barbecue with Nick? You're gonna get cornered. Hey, give me your Mount Rushmore White Sox, please, sir.
I'm telling you what,
no idea.
If I do get a chance to rub shoulders with White Sox fans that I just are meeting, like we're at a barbecue and somebody's meeting, introducing me as a friend to friend, and they're a White Sox fan. Absolutely, that is a question I ask right away. You learn a lot about somebody when you find out they're Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, quickly you'll be able to do it. So you can't go wrong, but good stuff. And that pod episode, I think will be coming out in a week and a half, 2 weeks, and I'll promote that. It was a fun episode talking about Paul Konerko and will he, won't he, and just the legend of Paul Konerko.
And then the Pope gets a Mount Rushmore too.
Pope's got his own. Yeah, he's got his own.
He's got a mural. He's got a mural. He's got everything he needs now.
Yeah. I went there, took a picture with that mural right when we got into the ballpark. That was right there for you at 140, and we had passed that area a second time throughout the game, walking around the ballpark, and the line was just unbelievable to get a picture there. So
it's just a picture,
it is just it is right now. It is just a picture.
People know it's the Pope isn't there.
Not even like a Disney Hall of Presidents, like animatronic. It's not even anything like that right now.
That's fantastic.
All right. Well, before we get to the quote of the week, and it's a good one from Chris Getz and his thoughts on Andrew Vaughn. Want to thank everybody for jumping in on the chat here live with us on this holiday weekend. It means a ton. Thank you so much for listening. Wherever you're at throughout your week, the audio available everywhere you find your podcast. Keep passing it along to other Sox fans in your life. Subscribe to the Good Guys Talk Back YouTube channel. Doesn't cost anything, and it really means a ton. So thank you. As always, Pat, for everything that you do and bring to the program. I know it's tough in your life, but this is Sox therapy and another fun episode, buddy.
I have a blast doing this, buddy. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else on 9:15 on a Sunday other than talking to you, sir.
Good. Excellent. That's the correct answer. So speaking of answers, here's Chris Getz trying to answer questions, as we all are, about Andrew Vaughn. At this point, though, we can't really rely on the expected numbers, Getz said before Friday's game. The level of production that we need to see out of him and that position needs to be better. There's some physical adjustments that can be made, and we're going to dive into that. So we view this as an opportunity for him to really slow down and regain the confidence. So sometimes it can just be a breath of fresh air to go to a different environment for a period of time. I do believe he's going to take advantage of it. It takes a toll on major league players to navigate seasons and careers. It's not always easy. It isn't. These guys are highly competitive. They want to be great, but what comes with having those high expectations of yourself is some frustrating times, and this game is very challenging. So, to be able to slow your world down on occasion can be very productive long-term, end quote.
That was a mouthful of a quote. Holy Mary Joseph. That was a lot. I do miss Pedro Grifol quote of the week. So they were just so much more entertaining and ridiculous.
They were.
These just don't hold a candle. We need some. Although last week tickled me a little bit with the hitting of people, and that was
there was
a misunderstanding or a miscommunication or whatever it was. That was funny. So I can't blame you. You're doing the work. I'm just saying I miss Pedro only for his ridiculous comments.
Those wrote themselves, and those really started because I just couldn't stand hearing him anymore. Like I got to have some fun with this. It's so ridiculous, the things he's saying and what he's trying to defend and the results. And it's just, so we got to really have a segment of this because it's so crazy.
I do miss it a little bit.
Yeah, it's a shame. But what I got out of that quote was, he didn't have to go on and on. It was a very Han-esque answer. He could have just sent, he needs to take a step back.
Yeah.
And then we'll end quote. So whatever. Yeah, it is what it is, man. Hopefully I do want eventually to get some production out of him, but I really don't see it. So it was, you just kind of have to file it away with all the other first rounders. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. We may have seen the last of Andrew Vaughn.
It's quite possible. Yeah. Because this could break you if you're not mentally strong.
Yeah.
And you get sent down and it's just, you might not recover from it. I don't know.
Well, he had those damning comments made about him a couple weeks ago, and about not working. I hope for his sake that's changed.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Pat. Well, let's do it all over again next Sunday if we can. That'll be the first Sunday of June.
June baby already. Boy, halfway through the year.
This season's
it's my birthday month, by the way.
Yes.
I'm going to celebrate the whole month of June.
You should. You get to celebrate all the way up to the end, which is awesome.
It's amazing. It's a great time to be alive, buddy.
Yeah. Well, good for you, and we'll get that celebration going next Sunday. Thank you all so very much for being with us. Hey, for Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.